Next, we'll have a panel of speakers moderated by Dot Cannon. Dot Cannon is a radio broadcaster and full-time podcaster who worked in Southern California talk radio for more than 20 years. She now owns a small independent media company in Long Beach and is the host of a long-running STEAM podcast, Over Coffee, on which she and her guests share the stories of innovation at the intersection of art and science. Please welcome our panel moderator, Dot Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. And I'd like to introduce our panel. It's a pleasure to welcome back Jen Espinosa-Goswami after a great presentation. She's our first panelist. Therese Samudio had 20,000, I beg your pardon, it's a little hard for me to see in here. Therese Samudio has had 10,000 in-person sales interviews with business owners who are chief revenue officers all across America while selling and coaching others to sell management consulting services. A member of the National Speakers Association, for which speakers must qualify as professionals to join, Therese is a speaker, author, and sales team coach. Welcome, Therese. With more than 2 decades of experience in television news and communications, Lori Ziebarth has seen the power words have on the heart, mind, and soul. Words can create chaos and calm, thoughtlessness and thoughtfulness, indifference and interest. Because of this, Lori feels a great responsibility to her audience to convey messages that are crisp, concise, and clear. As marketing manager for U.S. Bank, Lori is responsible for ensuring that staff and clients are engaged and informed. She holds degrees in business management, mass communications, television news, and communications management, but Lori's greatest accomplishment is being the single mom of 2 successful young men, ages 22 and 17. Welcome, Lori. And Sarah Bateman believes that every voice should be heard. As a young adult, she was uncomfortable expressing her opinions and ideas. She joined Toastmasters in her late 20s. Her first speech was a moment of silence. She kept trying and learning. She later became certified as a world-class speech coach through Craig Valentine and graduated from the apprentice program of the National Speakers Association Minnesota chapter. One of Sarah's greatest pleasures is to watch someone bloom as they find their voice. Please help me welcome our speakers. And I'd like to start by asking, Sarah, I would like to start with you. I'd like to know, how did you first start your journey from Toastmaster to professional speaker?
I started first to become a coach. I saw Craig Valentine, who is the 1999 world champion speaker. And he was just, the way he put together speeches was just so easy to follow and very direct. And it was just like so many things I hadn't thought about. So I took that course because I wanted to become a better speaker, but I also like to mentor others and help them put their ideas together in an orderly, flat fashion to get people's attention, to keep them engaged throughout their speech.
Sounds like Craig was the catalyst. Therese, the same question to you. What was your journey like from Toastmaster to professional speaker?
Thank you. My journey was just the opposite direction because I started out as a professional speaker. And after being a professional speaker, then I joined the apprentice program at the National Speakers Association and became a professional speaker there. And after that, I joined Toastmasters, which was more for local fun and camaraderie with other people who enjoy doing this thing as much as I do.
I haven't heard of that many people that start as a professional speaker and then go back to Toastmasters. Lori, your journey has been a little bit different. You are a corporate professional speaker. Would you tell us about that, please?
Sure. Being a professional speaker has all sorts of looks. And for me, being able to speak while being a communications manager is extremely important. When I first started out my career in communications, I struggled to talk to executives. And when you can't articulate your thoughts in front of the people that are in charge of your career trajectory, it's pretty limiting. And I finally ended up joining Toastmasters and really finding my voice and finding the way to calm my thoughts and put those thoughts together. So I found that I really had important things to say, and the executives would listen. And from there, it's been just an incredible offshoot of my career to be able to speak in a professional manner.
What an invaluable skill that is. Jen, you just gave us that great presentation, but how did you find your first paid speaking gig?
Oh, well, I worked on someone else. One of the things that helped me was I didn't know how to find engagements. So I would lurk on other professional speakers' websites or LinkedIn and look at who gave them testimonials. And I saw, oh, okay, so Lori, whatever, from this company, ABC company, hired this speaker who's part of the National Speakers Association to come to their platform. Maybe I should reach out to that person. And when I was feeling really brave, I would just approach that speaker and say, hey, would you be willing to provide a warm introduction for me? So that's one of the little known ways that I just reached out and said, hey, I have nothing to lose here. This person kind of knows me. We've had interactions in the past. Let's see if I can get a referral or a warm introduction. And it worked out. So that's kind of how I got the first paid speaking engagement.
What a great tip for all of our listeners and for us. But as we continue here, I'm going to make a request to our audience, which is, if you have questions for our speakers, especially anything that I'm not thinking to ask, would you type it in the chat? And we'll take as many as we can. What was one of the main challenges, and this is a question for everybody, that you encountered when you got started as a professional speaker? And how'd you deal with it? Can I put that to you, Sarah?
You repeat, I was drinking water.
That's perfectly fine. What was one of the main challenges that you encountered when you started your career as a professional speaker, and how'd you deal with it?
I think the main challenge was believing in myself that I was good enough to go out and do this. As they say, the first sell is to yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to take those extra steps to go out, meet people, and put yourself on the line, because it takes courage every time you go out. And, you might be rejected or whatever. So the biggest challenge for me was myself.
How do we get around that? Imposter syndrome is something I hear again and again and again. We all experience. What's your tip for getting around that?
Try it in a small way. And then once you do the small step, do a bigger step, the next step, next step. So don't think about the whole thing. Think about what's the first thing I can do right now.
The journey of 1,000 miles, starting with the first step. We're starting to get some questions I'd love to address with you. Craig asks, what is the biggest mistake aspiring professional speakers make in the first couple of steps? Great question. How about you, Therese? What you think?
Well, I want to say that when I started as a professional speaker, my route was a little bit like Lori's in that I was working for a large organization in sales. And because I had a message that management thought the rest of the salespeople needed, I was speaking professionally to my peers. And then what I found out was there were certain things they wanted to learn from me that they could not learn from anyone else. A lot of people that can teach sales, but have a specific message that is unique. And it's important to really define your niche very carefully. What are you the go-to person on? And the biggest mistake that people make is not realizing that the easiest part of the job is the speech. Giving a speech is the easiest part of what you'll do. For as difficult and challenging as it can be to structure a signature speech, which is a very good way to label that, your signature speech, from which all the other things flow, is to realize that you have to sell that speech. Jen says, Jen, your talk was great. You just gave so much information in such a concise way, so quickly. I've gone to 3-day seminars that elaborated on that, but that's a great map. Just really, if you've never been to a training on anything like this on the call here, you don't realize how much content Jen just gave you and the value of that. That was really an intense and excellent talk. But this is a sales job. She can send you all the lists that there are, but if you won't pick up the 1,000-pound telephone and make the call to find out if that person is interested in hiring you at all, And if you're not willing to take no for an answer and say, well, some will, some won't, so what? Next, move on. And if you're not willing to talk about money, and if you're not willing to write and sign contracts, this is not a profession that you should ever engage in. You can't be there. You will not make a nickel. You better have something else that feeds you. And one of the biggest competitors for professional speakers is people who will speak for free. We don't like people who will speak for free. We want people who want to get paid good money to do this. You better be able to talk about money. You better be able to sell. You better be able to sign contracts and figure out how they can pay you and figure out how to do that negotiation about money. That's really important.
I'd love to hear from Lori, Sarah, and Jen. How do we talk about money? That is really a difficult thing to bring up. Can I start with you, Jen?
I love that Therese shared that, because I certainly had no knowledge of how to approach a sales conversation. When I started my business, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of playing around and experimenting with different things. And the sales conversation is very difficult if you're not in a sales environment. So I fully agree with that. How do you bring up money? Well, you just bring it up, and you don't wait for the other person to talk about it first, because it's kind of like a game of chicken. If you wait for the person you're talking to on the other side to bring up money first, they're going to undercharge what you want to be paid. So those of you who said you want to get paid $2,500 plus for your next engagement, you will be the one who leads the money conversation when you're engaging with someone to be a paid speaker on their platform. You have to be the one to bring it up. You have to be the one to say, this is my fee, and then shut your mouth, because you need to let them reflect and react to what you just shared, and you need to be quiet before you talk yourself out of it.
The shutting my mouth would be the hardest part for me personally. Lori, what about in the corporate arena? How do you ask for money and do it successfully as a professional speaker?
I think the one thing I ask for money for is for paid media campaigns that I'm working on, and there is quite the fight, let's say, for those dollars, because everybody thinks that their campaign is the best. So there is a lot of prep going into that. But the fact that I speak well and can do that on camera and against other people in the room, I go in with the confidence of, sorry, other people in the room, because my presentation is going to knock it out of the park, and getting those dollars is really valuable. That's the first part. Then I have to come with the numbers, sort of to Therese's point, that you have to be able to back it up. If I come in and get money and I can't deliver on that campaign, the next money buy or the next money ask is not going to happen. So coming in with the numbers, what did you deliver from that? And that's how you really have to really back it up in the corporate world.
Thank you, Lori. Sarah, I'm going to come to you for the final thought here, asking about money and setting your price. What works for you?
Well, I started small. I started where I was comfortable. I would coach for $45 an hour, and then you raise it and you're like, oh, they'll pay that much. Oh, you raise it again. So you raise it until you find where your level of competence is, and then you improve yourself. So you're always thinking about, how can I improve? How can I make this better so that you have more value, so that then you can charge more money?
Thank you to all of our fantastic panelists today, Jen Espinosa-Goswami, Therese Samudio, Lori Ziebarth, and Sarah Bateman. I'm really sorry that we are out of time, but it's been great talking to all of you, and fantastic tips. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.